Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Biz Talk. My name is Nader Corey. I'm a San Francisco-based photographer, board member for APA. We took a little break, actually, and we're back at it. And I got my summer shirt on. Yeah, so, I've myself personally have been on 3 shoots over the past couple of months, and just thought it would be a good idea to have a group of photographers come on to say for them personally how it's been implementing, like producing shoots with all the safety concerns. You know, we've learned a lot over the past few months of like set safety and you know, and a lot of people have gone back to set. You know, of course, here in California, you know, Governor Newsom just rolled back some of these opening, and we do have some. This just happened yesterday, and so we're just hearing things as they come in. We have heard that Smashbox Studio in LA or in Culver City is closed until further notice. If you go on the Culver City site for the government, they have a listing of all the different things, and one of them is indoor photography in a studio is actually closed and considered a non-essential office use. However, here in San Francisco, I just heard from Susanna Robbins from the Film SF, and she's saying that everyone is wearing masks at all times, but you can still shoot indoors. Talent can't remove their masks, so it's kind of, yeah. Right now we're still haven't heard from other cities and studios and things, but if anyone hears things, let us know. Be glad to hear more about it. So before I start talking to the panelists, I'm going to push it over to Juliet Wolf-Robin. Hey, Juliet.
Hi. So I would say what we believe is that photo studios are closed. So you might be able to take photographs, but not in a photo studio because they're considered an office at this time. And I think it just happened. It hit people so quickly yesterday that we're still trying to find out exactly what that means for everyone. And it might be that you can get a permit to shoot since the film offices are open, but you can't find a studio to shoot in. But certainly there's other places that people are shooting. We're going to be taking questions either in the chat area or the Q&A, and we'll monitor them as they go along. Keep in mind, we are APA, it's American Photographic Artists. We're a not-for-profit association of photographers for photographers. So everything we're doing is to try to help photographers stay in business, continue in business, thrive in business, and be safe and successful. So we are looking for subjects, things we want to talk about that will help everybody get the information that they need. So some of that you'll find on apanational.org. You can look at our events page and find out which webinars we have coming up next. But we welcome you to participate with what we're doing, sign up for our newsletters, watch us on social media, and see what we're up to. But I want to thank everybody who's come here today, because sharing information is the best way for us to know what to do as a community. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thanks. Okay, well, yeah, let me just introduce our speakers. I'm not going to say all of your full bios, but I'll just start with, it's mostly LA and Erin from San Francisco, but Emily Shur, Matt Armendariz, did I pronounce that correctly? And Christopher Malcolm from LA photographers, and I would call you, I know most of you are also doing some video as well, motion. Emily, did I mention you? Sorry, Emily Shur. From LA as well, and then Erin Kunkel, thanks for joining us. from San Francisco. And last but not least, Matthew Odom. And Matthew is also a board member of APA Atlanta and from Macon, Georgia, right?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, everybody. And it's great to be on here with such talented folks, and I really mean that. Please check out all their work. It's beautiful, beautiful stuff. Yeah, just to get started, I just thought we'd kind of start in a general sense and go around and get a sense from you all about some of the shoots you've been working on. Maybe like if we can keep it to like 2 to 3 minutes, but yeah, like 3 minutes or so. But just talk about maybe if there were some of the successful things that around safety that happened and things that maybe could have improved, or some challenges that you want to talk about. Or if you're like mostly just working from home, just talk about like why, if you want to mention why you're doing that, and if there have been challenges shooting remotely, etc. Yeah, is anyone specific want to start, or anyone in particular? I'll just pick somebody. Okay, yeah, Chris.
So I'll start. Yeah, so my name is Christopher Malcolm. I'm a Los Angeles-based photographer and director. I mostly work in advertising for like fitness, activewear, lifestyle type brands. And so, of course, once the quarantine first started, I was at home like the rest of us. So I kind of did a bit of a self-portrait project. So that was like kind of phase one. And then I started rolling on and started doing more personal work, like because I got sick of looking at myself. So I wanted to do some personal work with other people. So I started kind of doing a project I call The Distance Between Us, which kind of looks a bit at the way workout routines have changed with everybody with gyms closing, with everybody having to stay at home. So that kind of took me back out of the house again. And I've done 10 of those so far, because I did another one yesterday. And then I did, actually was able to turn that into a bit of editorial work. Had a couple assignments last week. So I've actually been pretty busy since the quarantine started. I'll keep it short. I mean, some of the simple things I'm doing is I'm just making sure that, for example, we were talking about studios earlier, so all my shoots are taking place outside. Had to do things like learning to shoot in rubber gloves, like which I'm finding out rubber gloves and zippers don't go well together, because that's a bad idea. Just basic stuff, like, for example, I'm a director, so I have to do video as well. So things you don't think about, like, for example, audio, like how are you supposed to pin a lav to somebody if you can't touch somebody? So things like when to use that versus using a shotgun mic, when to shoot with the zoom lens versus primes. I'm one of those photographers who likes to be up in people's business, and I can't necessarily do that during social distancing. So it's things like that, and just a lot of general things that I'm kind of working out throughout this process, and trying to figure out a way to again create what I normally create, but do it without endangering people on the set, and vice versa.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Anyone else?
I'll go. I'm fine.
Sure.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Armendariz. I'm a photographer. I shoot primarily food for commercial, editorial, a lot of cookbooks. My situation is a little unique because I'm actually married to a food stylist. So I've been able to continually work through everything. There was about a 3-week period where things just shut down. But then my clients, since I've worked remotely for 10 years with people in New York and teams all over the place, it seemed kind of like a natural. So, when you're quarantined and live and married to a food stylist, you can continue to work from home at our studio. The thing that made it interesting were a few large shoots that I've done where we kind of had to, it was just the two of us. So we had to scale down how we work, the expectations from clients. We can only do so many in a day because now I'm acting as a prop stylist and as a producer and as a digital tech. And so that's been a little frustrating, but I'm still thankful that I'm working. So that's that.
Right. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I want to ask questions, but I'll just let everyone go. Just kind of briefly introduce.
Well, well, of course, we'll get into my situation a little later, but I started back shooting probably, July, probably the early part of June, and I was shooting pretty much nonstop. I kind of got assignment after assignment after assignment. It's kind of when the Black Lives Matter movement took off, so it was kind of, I was out covering a lot of that, and so I had been ripping and running. The one thing that I've taken away is that a lot of people that I photographed are actually more nervous than I am. So I don't necessarily have a problem with people social distancing on shoots. I've actually had a couple of people even call 2 or 3 times before a shoot and go, "Are we still shooting? Are we still shooting?" And I go, "Yeah, we're still shooting." And so, but for the most part, it was good to get back out and just do what you like to do. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Erin?
Yeah, so I've done a range of shoots. The first few were at my house, shooting kind of tabletop and food and interiors, where I, like Matt, was kind of operating as my own stylist, digitech, producer. And because it was my own place, I felt like I could control the environment. I used my husband as a model for one of the shoots. But there are obvious, limitations to kind of how many of those kind of shoots you can do. And we're bidding one now for another food kind of tabletop shoot that we would do at my home studio, and just figuring out how to pare down the crew so that people feel like they can do a good job and have the support they need, but also give everybody ample amounts of space. And then I also did a 2-week studio job in San Francisco that was pretty, intense. We tried to get the crew under 10 and ended up being more around 12 people. And that client had safety protocols in place for, taking temperatures every day and answering a questionnaire. But that to me felt a lot more stressful, and that the inherent risk in that was greater. And so for that, I think the biggest thing was just communicating beforehand and not making assumptions about how other people are living and working. That, as we were all talking about earlier, the way we're all moving through the world and operating in our personal lives can vary a lot. And so you don't want to wait until you get on set to have those kind of conversations or put anyone on the spot. So I felt like I was really careful in who I chose for my crew and having really extensive conversations beforehand about what their life is all about these days, how comfortable they feel, making sure they could advocate for themselves, or that they knew I would always advocate for them if something made them uncomfortable. And I think that's kind of the most important thing to me when I expanded to bigger shoots with more people, is just having those really clear lines of communication open and making sure that we weren't just, assuming that other people are going to take care of things or do things the way that, we as individuals think they should.
Yeah.
I'm Emily. I shoot mostly entertainment and portraiture-based advertising, editorial, entertainment, advertising, key art type of stuff. So haven't been doing a ton of that lately, but I like the way, Chris, you put it into like phases of kind of, that's, I feel that for sure. I feel like in the beginning, the first phase of this was like, there was no work. I just was like kind of taking pictures for myself how I normally would, but that was becoming more of like a daily practice and, meditation kind of thing, where I was like, just doing something having to do with photography. I wound up what I would think of as maybe a second phase, doing a shoot at my house for an advertising shoot for a client I've worked with once before, where I used my house as the location. I used my husband, my dog. I used myself, unfortunately, as the talent in the shoot. I shot with no crew. I had prop stylists and wardrobe stylists shop and prep the job and deliver things to the house. I have my office is in a garage, so I stored everything down here for, you know, however many days before we shot. But when it came to shooting, I, you know, had to place everything. I lit everything. I communicated remotely with the client and agency. And then just a couple weeks ago, I did my first shoot in a studio at Smashbox for an editorial client with talent, with you know, actually 2 talent that are related to each other. And it was different. It was interesting. It was actually not a horrible experience. It was pretty positive. I totally agree with you, Erin, that it's so important to be upfront about just kind of like what the deal is going to be safety wise going into the set. And I definitely needed all of the resources to be in place. And I only, you know, brought in crew, very, very minimal crew that I felt that I know I trust them, they trust me. We all are of the same mindset when it comes to safety and our work ethic. And it wound up, you know, it was different, but it wound up working out, I think, as well as it could. And yeah, so since then, haven't really shot much, but bidding on stuff and trying. It seems like a lot of kind of education and discussion about what can be done, how would this work, how do you see this working, can you explain about how your approach would be. So the job, you know, it seems like some jobs just kind of are fizzling out, especially maybe now in California, fizzling out, but it's a lot of talking, a lot of talking when you're trying to bid.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to talk about. But you know, I guess moving on, has anyone actually had to say no to a shoot because you felt like they weren't really taking you seriously? I mean, that's one question that's coming up for me, and then also, how are you starting the conversation with clients? Does anyone like actually have their own 15-page guidelines or 20-page guidelines that you're sending right off the bat, or are you kind of just like client yesterday, I just sent it in an email like, here are the top 10 things, you know, to kind of to consider. That's kind of after the whole like initial conversation happens, you know, because I don't want to like necessarily scare them away at first. You know, I want to kind of build a rapport with them. But any thoughts on that?
Matt here. When this all happened, I was on a 1-week shoot, and I could tell how freaked out everyone was. We could see what the Bay Area was doing. This was before it was mandatory that things got shut down. And we collectively just stopped shooting the last 2 days of the shoot to understand that we'll come back later, but safety was paramount. It was this unknown thing happening. So I'm not afraid to say no and shut it down. So going forward, if something doesn't feel comfortable, then I'm going to have to take the crew, and that's my priority, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually turned down a couple of during the protest because I just didn't feel like it was safe to go in the middle of a protest at that time. You know, especially with me being high risk, I was like, nah, I just completely didn't feel comfortable doing it. You know.
Right. Yeah. Understandable. What was that? Someone asked the question around. Someone was wearing. Elizabeth asked. She did a shoot recently in conjunction with a commercial. My client kept his mask on his neck and I was too uncomfortable to say anything. Has anyone else had this happen? Would appreciate your advice. I actually had one of my clients, he just kept taking his mask off and I didn't want to, like, it was definitely uncomfortable. He was actually the owner of the company. And I just said something to him and then followed it up with an email that just to remind everybody, because it was a 4-day shoot. But yeah, it was very uncomfortable to say something to him. I'm glad I did. Anyone else?
You have to. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks that we're put in that position, but I mean, I feel like we have to. We have to. I think the discomfort, it may be outweighed by my annoyance that I'm even put in that position, that I, you know, am having to decide whether or not I need to like speak up to the client. I mean, it's frustrating. That hasn't happened to me, but that would be frustrating. You know, the shoots I have done, the one I did indoors, we wore masks for 10 hours. We ate lunch at individual tables outside. The people I photographed never saw me from here down. They have no idea what I look like, you know, which is odd and maybe, you know, definitely not the most fun way to work, but that's just what it is now. And I did ask someone on that shoot to give me a little space. I specifically had a monitor set up so that everyone wouldn't be crowded around, you know, my tech and that area. And I did have to point that out a couple times, you know, and I didn't mean it. I mean, if that person was offended by me saying that, then that's really on them. I said it as nicely and politely as I could. But yeah, I think it is. I mean, not that it's all our responsibility, but it is everyone's responsibility, you know, not that it's only our responsibility. But I think, yeah, like unfortunately, we will have to say something when that comes up.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's definitely. Oh, I think it's definitely, you know, the way I always view it, like, you know, I'm not the ultimate client. I'm not the most, you know, important person on the set in terms of, you know, financial stake in this whole thing. But I always feel like, you know, as the photographer and you've got this large crew, you know, it ultimately, I feel, whether it's right or not, that the buck comes down to me. So I gotta, you know, make sure everybody's safe, make sure everybody's good. And I've definitely been on some shoots, you know, since trying to come back where, you know, not everybody has for whatever reason, not everybody has the same view of how dangerous COVID is, you know? And so you have to kind of, you know, politely and politically say, you know, get everybody to basically fall in line. You know, some people that's making a joke, you know, or brushing it off to get them to be like, oh, okay, yeah, fine, I'll put it off. You know, some people it's, you know, I always make sure, like with my call sheets, make sure up front, you know, even pre-COVID with my call sheets up front, everything, you know, this is what's going to happen, blah, 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 blah. So especially now, it's like, okay, I'm going to be wearing this, you know, this mask. You're not necessarily going to see me. You know, don't be offended. You know, I have showed up and had certain subjects, you know, who didn't necessarily take COVID very seriously. Like, oh, you're going to wear that mask the whole time? I'm like, yes, I'm going to wear this mask the whole, you know, the whole time. And, you know, I'm going to be standing over here. And so, I mean, it's not easy necessarily, but I think I kind of feel like, you know, our job with or without COVID is essentially to kind of, you know, have a charm offensive and certain kind of be able to manipulate and move people around set the way we want. And I think that's just more important now than ever to be able to make sure that people, even if it's against their will or against what they might think, are actually living up to, you know, the responsibility to protect everybody else on set.
Yeah, one thing that I started doing too was if I would photograph somebody, I would try to go find their social media just to see what they've been doing. Because a lot of times people will tell you one thing, but then they're out doing another. And of course, as you stated when we started the conversation, is that even down to my assistant, my assistant, he's been all over the place. So of course, I just did my shoot solo because I was like, nah, I'm not gonna take a chance, and I didn't want to put him around a talent that I was photographing, and that can turn into an issue as well. So, I mean, every base has to be covered with this, and it's a team effort all the way from the top all the way down. Everybody has to be on the same page with this.
Has anyone actually been able to get tested before a shoot? Like, or has that even been like even in the conversation?
On the 2-week shoot that I did, we tried to get people tested, and the in-house people were tested, but none of us crew were tested or were able to. They came to actually the set and did it the first morning, so they very could have easily done all of us, but they didn't do that. We just did temperature checks.
Right. Wow.
And I think now it's easier to get tests now than it was. That was about a month or 6 weeks ago. So it may become easier, but then I also think with all of these things, it's like, is the onus on each individual person or your photo assistant or whoever to do that? Or should it, to me, it makes more sense to have a system in place where beforehand, we're saying like, these are the protocols, this is the plan, you need to get tested, we're providing the test. I think if you leave it up to just individuals, there's too much room for miscommunication and different standards of how things should be done.
Yeah, I think ideally, I haven't been able to do this myself, but I think a lot of people, a lot of the previous discussions where people talk about having a person that's all their job is on set is basically to make sure everybody's following protocol. I think that's definitely like the ideal situation, because then you don't have to deal with it. You basically have a little pit bull. That's just their job. They're all their job. They have nothing else to do all day, but annoy everybody to make sure everybody's wearing their mask and keeping their,
Yeah.
And that can then keep you out of it. So I think that's the ideal situation. I mean,
have you looked into hiring a set medic? I see that Lucie Schaefer mentioned that she added a safety officer to their job. So have any of you looked into having somebody separate whose job it is to monitor? Emily?
I had that on the shoot that I did at Smashbox. We had a dedicated health and safety person who was brought in via the producer of the shoot, who have all been like OSHA trained and are all aware of the guidelines, the safety guidelines and everything. So that was someone who was on set with us that day. There was someone whose job it was to just clean, disinfect, make sure everything is, on the up and up. And yeah, and I just want to say, like, I feel somewhat responsible for the people that I am bringing into the set, my assistants, my digitech. Like, I would really, even if I did feel a little bit uncomfortable speaking up to a client or someone about their mask wearing, it's not just for me. I feel like it's like I can't expect my crew to come in and work in an environment that's sketchy. It's not something I would ever feel comfortable with, and that alone is enough, I think, for me to speak up. And I did have a couple editorial shoots that were very mellow outdoors, just me and 2 subjects, and I asked one of them if they would wear a mask if the photo editor wanted some shots of one of the subjects in a mask just to speak to the times, and they declined that. So that was, and this goes back to your point, Erin, about not assuming, because these were all kind of like people I did assume it would have been no big deal. I thought, like, yeah, why wouldn't you you know, why would that be a problem? But I figured I would just ask ahead of time just to, you know, make sure I didn't like spring it on them. And they said they'd rather not. And I was really surprised. And it does just go to show you can't assume that, you know, you could be in agreement on so many things, you know, so many ideals. And then like, for some reason, this one issue seems to really be
Was
all
that
over the
was that a
place in
vanity
people.
issue? Was it vanity that they didn't want to be?
I don't know. I didn't ask. I was like, okay, copy that.
Yeah.
And I just didn't really want to get into it because I didn't want to get into like a,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, like,
Mhm.
okay, cool.
Right.
Glad I asked. Now I know.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I'm curious about as well is you know, not all shoots are like, you know, bigger budgets, and so like with smaller shoots that, you know, there's not a lot of crew and not a lot of budget, you know, how do you get creative with making sure there's set safety, right? And how do you also maybe talk to the client about actually having a safety person, like, you know, of course there's set medics, there's a safety compliance officer, you know, do you try to have, yeah, is it the producer or production coordinator that's helping you manage it during pre-production and then on set as well? Is a production coordinator necessarily trained enough for that? And yeah, it's kind of like, it's almost kind of a whole new, it's a new role on set. And how do we identify, you know, those people if it's not like a official set medic or a compliance officer? I'm just curious, like, how that's going to evolve. Any other thoughts on that, about how to make that happen on set?
What I'm noticing is I've never had to steer the ship as much as I am now in terms of explaining to clients, to producers, how we have to do things now. Whereas before it was a little more of a conversation, but now it's kind of like, okay, well, this person is going to be in charge of this. That's what I've assigned that person. This is how we're going to do this, that kind of thing, because, you know, it's still my set and I still have to make sure people are safe. It's just a weird time. I hope that answers the question, though. It's like we're having to kind of make it up as we go along, and I've never had to tell clients like, no, this is the way we actually have to do this for our safety.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of these things, you know, with safety, it's kind of reminds me of all the things I had to learn as I matured as a photographer about, yes, you have to talk about money. Yes, you have to kind of go through and learn on shoots and how to kind of speak up, and like, some clients may, you know, you may have disagreements, but you just have to kind of work through it as you go along. And I've definitely learned a lot since the first shoot I did.
Imagine.
But
And you
Yeah,
are legally responsible. You're responsible for your crew.
yeah, someone asked, legally is the photographer a liable party? I don't quote me on this, but whoever you're employing is, but so like if your client has, you know, their staff on, you know, I believe they're liable for that. You need to ask a lawyer about that specifically, but
I think insurance might come into play with that, like whose insurance the job falls under. And
right. Yeah, as far as I know from our past biz talks and from talking to Tom Pickard, my insurance is, a lot of the workers' comp will cover, actually, if somebody that's under your employ gets sick on set, so they're hospital and things like that. Okay, any other, let's see,
So there's a question from somebody asking about having to photograph office people who are working together with mock clients that they provide. They do not wear masks and are not 6 feet from each other. They want this and are okay with it. And if I'm willing, should I do it? I feel uncertain. I think there was a question, Natalie, when you talked to the film office, the talent had to wear a mask from what you were hearing.
Yeah, indoors, yes. Outdoors in San Francisco, if there's social distancing, I believe you can have the mask off.
But Atlanta and New York might have different situations, right? If you're in Atlanta, you could photograph people without a mask.
Yeah, I was gonna say here, yeah, you probably can because it's just not enforced the way it should be. So I would say it all kind of depends on the shoot itself, if they're going to wear a mask or if they're not, which goes back to what Emily said before. You have to basically find out, beforehand what's what. So
would you be comfortable with that if you were on a shoot and having people that close to each other? Or?
Something of that magnitude? No, I wouldn't feel comfortable at all, because what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for trouble, because you got to keep in mind, and I kind of let the cat out the bag a little bit. You've got to wait a certain amount of days after a shoot. So if someone gets sick, you won't know it until 14 days. They're not going to show it like right then. So you don't know if someone's coming in that's sick and not showing symptoms, and you're putting them right next to someone, and vice versa. You don't know if they're infecting 4 or 5 different people. And so 2 to 3 weeks later, you got a big problem, which then goes back to the insurance issue, which then goes back to workman's comp. So in a situation like that, if someone came to me and asked me, would I do a shoot that requires 4 or 5 people in an office setting with no mask on, I would probably tell them, no, we probably need to postpone the shoot. And that's just about the easiest way I can put it. It's just too big at some point, we've got to realize that it's too big of a risk with some of these shoots. And I think a lot of people, and this is new. This is a learning experience. This is a learning experience across the board. This is something nobody on this panel has ever seen before. So we're going to have to, some of this is going to be trial by fire, and some of this is going to have to be, hey, we've got to have some serious guidelines, because everybody's lives is at stake on a set. That's just the way it's going to be for at least 6 months to a year. That's the way it's going to be. Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid to say no. Do not be afraid to say no to a job. If you do not, I think in that question somebody said they didn't feel safe. The fact that you're saying that is your answer right there. Yep. No job is no money is more important than your health, because if you're sick, you can't make any money. So that's my thoughts on that.
And it's not just your health as well, it's your family, everybody, it's not, it's one thing if you're willing to take your own health into your own hands and you're an adult and you are, willing to take that risk, but it's not just your health, are you going to quarantine for 2 weeks after every job like that? Like, probably not, if you're already willing to put yourself in the situation, so I mean, I agree. I would not feel comfortable in a small office setting with a group of people close to each other with no masks. No.
Yeah. Emily, do you want to talk briefly about what you've seen in LA County around that? For masks?
With what?
With like the health order?
Oh, I mean, I haven't had a ton of experience. I know, when we shot at Smashbox, there was a whole check-in procedure with the temperature checks and a questionnaire. And I mean, as much as those things are all very important and the protocols are all very important, and I agree with you, Matthew, we really need to have some across the board standard guidelines, so certain photographers don't feel like they're the stick in the mud who wants things to be safe and they're afraid to say something because everyone's not on the same page. It's, that sucks. Like, are you going to lose a job because you want things to be safe. And if you do, then you do. I agree. There's no job that is worth, you know, potentially putting yourself in a bad situation. But like the temperature checks are kind of arbitrary, you know, because we all know that that's not like the definitive symptom of being positive. I mean, what really would be helpful is if there were tests everyone could take that we could get results back, you know, in 10 minutes, and before everyone goes on set, that becomes kind of a mandatory process. Like that would be helpful, you know. But that's not where we're at right now. So we do the best we can. And I kept my crew as limited as possible. You know, when I did do a shoot with the crew, we really, I worked with people I've worked with for 10 years, you know, and know very well. I don't want to work with people I don't know. I don't want to work with producers that are too relaxed. I want to work with professional, you know, experienced people who understand that this is not just like, I want to work, I want to shoot. Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's cool and all, but like, you know, I feel like I want to surround myself with people that all understand the value of, you know, people and their family's health, and we can get the job done. It's going to take maybe a little longer. Maybe we have less shots in a day, like, and those are conversations, like you said, Nanner, like about money. You know, you got to learn how to talk about money. You got to learn how to talk about, and this is going to be one of those things that you know, doesn't have to be a bad conversation. It's just, this is part of working, and this is part of being a professional photographer, director in 2020. These are conversations that have to happen. They can happen in a really friendly, warm way, but it can't be like, I'm nervous to bring this up when the job is being bid on, or, you know, if we add money to the estimate for these safety protocols, am I going to lose a job? It's like, if you do, you're better off not getting that job. I mean, I would definitely turn down a job that I didn't feel comfortable about.
I actually had a job I was supposed to be shooting. If I shot it, would have been this week. But the producer called, and he's from New York, so, you know, of course, they're just opening up, getting back rolling. And so he called, and he said, well, Matt, how's the situation down there? And I told him flat out, I said, if it was me, I wouldn't be shooting. And I think they went back, they talked, and then he called me last week and was like, yeah, man, we're gonna take your advice on this one, man. We're gonna just push it out. Because you know, these people are coming from New York. They're coming to a situation down here in Georgia where it's hostile. And it goes back, you have to watch out for people, the best interest. You know, I could easily say, yeah, man, come on down, man. And, you know, he gets here, gets off the plane, he realizes that it's a madhouse here. And, you know, and it creates a you know, a bad situation. And it's just really not worth it. Just right now, safety is paramount across the board. Safety has to be the most important thing right now. The health and wellness of everybody on set. You know, everybody has to be accounted for. It's almost like with education teachers. Walk around, everybody has to be accounted for in the classroom. You know, is this person doing their job? Is that person doing their job? Are we sanitized? Are we, you know, even down to craft services, how we have to handle craft services way different than we were used to. You know, people go and walk up and get their stuff. Now everything has to be spaced out. Every facet of what we do has to be looked at. You know, all the way down to the grips. Are we wiping down C-stands? Are we spraying sandbags? You know, everything has to be covered.
And you got tested. Can you talk about, you had to wait 8 days to get results?
So, for those who don't know, I tested positive for coronavirus. And so it took 8 days to get my test. The problem is not the test results, rather. It's not the testing. It's the results and how long it takes to get them. There are some tests that are out there that's 15 minutes. But guess what? everybody's trying to get that test. So the demand is extremely high, and most places that are doing those have cutoffs. Like I went to one this morning. By the time I went to go get tested, it was the cutoff. So I had to go take a state test, which therefore means that my quarantine is technically over. But because I hadn't received a negative or a positive, I still have to quarantine. So I won't get those results until Saturday. So I'm stuck on quarantine again until Saturday. So when someone asks, well, have you taken a test before a shoot? Then that test, you literally, the way I figured it up is, if you're going to do a shoot and people are saying, well, we need the test. The test is really not going to do any good unless you're testing 2 to 3 weeks out from the shoot. And then if you're shooting 2 to 3 weeks out from the shoot, you have to not be doing anything else, which means you have to shoot and sit down. You can't be taking any other jobs, which therefore comes into people like Emily and Chris, where we editorial gigs where you might get 4 a week, you might get 3 a week. And so now you got to figure out where's going to be the cutoff line of where I'm going to stop working and then prepare myself for another shoot. Well, we already know the average photographer is probably not going to do that unless they're testing every week, which therefore I was going to mention this later on, but I'll mention it now, is that if you're actively working, you need to be testing once a week, because what happens is you'll find out in that number of days, in that it kind of lapses, and you'll know where you are. But the problem that I've seen from people is that they're testing, and this is just people I know that do regular jobs. They're testing, oh, I got a negative test, I'm fine. And so then they go out and they're just doing whatever. And then the whole time, you may be asymptomatic like me. I showed no symptoms, but because I had a shoot where after I got done, I felt really uncomfortable, because I did an agricultural shoot and the guy was loosey-goosey. And so I said, no, I don't feel too comfortable about this one. So I went and tested. Well, the Monday I tested, I didn't know I was positive, but I was social distancing, wearing my mask, doing whatever. Had I not been doing that, I went shopping at Sam's that day. So had I not walked around with a mask on, I would have infected 200 to 300 people. I'd have been a super spreader. Now, mind you, I had a shoot that same week, not knowing I was asymptomatic, but we social distanced. She stayed on one side of the room, I stayed on the other side of the room, and we made it happen. And so I kept my mask on the entire time, done. Now I had to go back. Once I found out I was positive, I had to contact trace every single person that I had came in contact with, every single business establishment, every person, even down to my next door neighbor. I had to let everybody know what happened. So what I'm saying is that when we're doing these shoots, you have to make sure, one, people have tested, they know their status. People who are shooting on a consecutive basis, or people who are assistants, producers, they're testing. We all have to be getting tested on a consistent basis, know where we are, make sure we're quarantining, and make sure we're advising people that you think that has been exposed they need to be quarantined as well. It's a long and tedious process. I'm telling you, you don't want to gamble on whether or not you're asymptomatic or not. I've got another friend that's a photographer right now. All six of her family members have the virus, and they're all showing symptoms, all the way down to the 2-year-old child. She's a wedding photographer, and I can about guarantee I know how she got it. So what I'm saying is that you have to put in protocols to when you're dealing with people. Like now, anyone who knows me, and I know Andrea's watching this, and I know Darcy's watching this, and they know how I am, how I've been. So anyone who knows me knows I've been outside of a hazmat suit. I've probably been the most careful person on this panel, and I still ended up with it. So what I'm saying is that you just have to do the best you can and make sure that you try to cover all your bases. If you feel like you're overreacting, that means you're probably doing the right thing. You're probably doing the right thing.
Can I ask you, so do you feel that your test came back positive because of that shoot that you felt uncomfortable about, or that was just the catalyst that made you want to get tested? It's because it's hard to say with this thing. It's kind of hard for you to pinpoint and go, oh, it's that guy there, But I can say all signs point
to, it was probably that one particular shoot. Now,
Because you were careful
yep.
in every other aspect of.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And it happened. What happened was, normally I take my mask off in the car. Well, that particular day, I took my mask off outside before I got in the car. And he just came up to me, man, just kind of willy-nilly. Hey, man, thanks for coming out today, man. We appreciate you. You know, just right in my personal space. You know, that social distancing went right out the window. And so after that, I just kind of was like, yep, let me go ahead and let's go ahead and get tested. And so.
Did you wait a certain amount of time before getting tested after that shoot?
I shot on a Friday, and so that Monday, because nobody was testing that weekend.
Soon.
Yeah, so I went and hurried up and did it. And so what I would tell you
already had come back positive.
Yep.
Just a few days afterward.
The virus only takes what people are starting to figure out is that, okay, let's say you got symptoms. People with symptoms, actually their symptoms actually lessen quicker. People that are asymptomatic have a 10-day window, which is why they tell you to quarantine. So for 10 days, I was basically just walking around. You know, the analogy I use is like giving out candy. I'm just giving out candy to everybody I see, you know. but you know, the thing about it is that you can be affecting people on set and don't know you're doing it. And that's the scary thing. That's the scary part about it. And so you just have to make sure that you stay on top of yourself and just make sure that you know, if you feel like you need to quarantine, just do it. Just do it. And just, it's just better to be safe than to be sorry. But yeah, I was nervous. And after that, I just, you know, didn't take any chances and just said, let me just go ahead and get tested. Even if I did a shoot in March, and so it was probably March the 15th, 16th, and 17th. I was in Atlanta. We had a crew come in from Washington. This is when it first broke out really bad. And y'all on the West Coast know how it was up in Washington State. And so they came in, and we automatically, before there was even a thing such as social distancing, we were already doing it. Because I told them, I said, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I'll tell you this is how we're going to do it. We're going to have lunch. Everybody's going to spread out. I literally told everybody, you here, there, over there. We're going to spread out. I'll get the shots I need, but I'll be over here. And this is how it's going to be, you know. And after we got through with the shoot, we were in quarantine. This is when we were on a big quarantine. I just made a round check. I just called everybody who I shot with. How you doing? How you feeling? Everything okay? You know, just to follow up, make sure everybody was good. We're blessed that nobody, you know, had COVID or what have you. When it comes to, I hear a lot of people saying, well, we're taking, and I've seen emails this, well, people going, we're going to be doing temperature checks. Temperature checks now is the new thing just to say, because a temperature check is not going to do any good against someone that's asymptomatic, because they're not going to show any of the symptoms. So you have to get history on and ask. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it's just like Emily and Erin said, hey, we talk about money, that's uncomfortable. We talk about that all the time. But when it comes to this, you're going to have to go, what have you been doing the last 10 to 12 days? Have you gone anywhere? How do you feel about wearing a mask all day? Because here in Georgia, people are saying, well, I can't wear a mask all day because of my health. I can't do, you know, they're coming up with all kinds of excuses not to wear the mask. So you're going to have to ask people before you photo, how do you feel about a mask? Photo editors, if we got photo editors watching this, be careful of how you're sending photographers out into the workforce, because we're walking right into something that we don't know what we're walking into. So it's like when you were asking, do you want the mask on or do you want it off? Well, we want it off. Well, okay, well, we want it off. Now we got to have another discussion. What happens if this person is walking around with COVID and I get infected? Those are questions that we got to start asking. It's uncomfortable, but anyone who knows me knows I'm a man that deals in reality. And that's the reality of the situation, is that we've got to ask tough questions and cover all bases, because at the end of the day, everybody's health is on the line.
Thank you, Matthew. Thanks so much. Just one other question was, how long before that shoot with the agricultural shoot did you have a shoot before that?
The shoot I had before that was about a week apart. So I had one shoot, and then I took a couple of days off. Because what I started doing was I noticed how much I was working. And so that's another thing that I mentioned, is that if you feel like you're working a lot and you kind of like starting to get away from it, then just kind of start spreading out shoots if you can. You know, if you have that authority where you can say, hey, I want to schedule this shoot here. And that's something else that needs to be brought up with photo editors, is that be careful of how you schedule the shoots, because you're piling them right on top of people that's already working. So you need to find out from photographers how many shoots have you had, so that way you can kind of know, okay, maybe I need to give this assignment to someone else who hadn't worked as much, because you got a situation where you got 4 or 5 shoots or 6 shoots and you've exposed yourself. Because either way it goes, when you're shooting, you're exposing yourself. Now the person may not have the virus, but you're still exposing yourself to the elements, to you can possibly run into it. So you just have to be leery about how much you're shooting, and kind of get a grasp on that. And that's the thing, is that I started feeling that way, like, okay, I'm starting to get a little away, because I've been working. Anybody can follow me on Instagram knows I had been rolling, and I just started getting kind of uneasy, started kind of like, and I started watching the correlation of numbers going up. You see 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and you see like Florida 15,000. You start seeing those numbers start going up, and then you start realizing that it's getting closer and closer and closer. So.
Yeah. No, and I've gotten a few tests because I've been shooting, and I can tell you, man, those things are they're uncomfortable, but doing it once a week, it makes me not want to shoot as much, that's for sure, because I definitely want to spread them out. They're not very comfortable. But yes, they're so important, and that's a really good perspective.
How long did it take you to get the results?
I took the test. Now this was funny. It was the thing that got me upset was I had to call them, because they're so overwhelmed. The test people are so overwhelmed that they're forgetting, like they forget to even call you and let you know, even send out the email. So I actually had to call the test site, the company that did the test, and then that's how they told me, and they apologized for it. But they said, we're just so overwhelmed, because people are testing, which is not a bad thing. People are actually testing, and so once I got those, they told me, and this is for future reference. If you test and you're positive, you start your quarantine from the day that you test positive. So luckily, I had already kind of sat down by the time they told me that I was positive. So I had it was about last week, and so my quarantine ended Sunday. But of course, like I told you, I have to test again, because that's the other thing, is you have to, if you have the symptoms and you quarantine, then you have to test twice to make sure that you get out of it. If you're asymptomatic, then you only have to test once, and then then you're good. So, but it takes a while, man. That's the thing. Everybody's saying, oh, we're gonna take tests before shoots, and I'm like,
well, in California, they're talking about testing like the day of the shoot or the day before the shoot. Nader, how long did it take you?
Oh, you mean to get my results back? Yeah. This one was it was like a day, but I'm sure that was before this surge.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that it's probably, taken.
Yeah, I took mine at the county today, and they told me that before the boom in tests, you could have got it in 24 to 48 hours, but now it's like 4 to 7 days. Yeah. And that's at the earliest. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was saying that you have to, once you shoot, if you test, then you need to kind of lay low until you get your results.
Yeah, I think, and before people have a shoot, it's probably good to make sure to try to find out how long it's going to take to get the test back, so that you can have time to say, hey, I can't show up at the shoot if I'm test positive.
Yep.
It's kind of tough, because it would be great to test before all shoots. That's the ideal world, right? But unfortunately, we're still not there. But we're better than we were back in March, in April. Wow, thank you, Matthew. That was really I really appreciate that, hearing that. So any others? We definitely have quite a few questions. I definitely, one thing I wanted to go over about was if any of you have, just in terms of your shoots, just thinking about ventilation and indoors, and Erin, you and I talked about that a little bit. Just any kinds of advice you have to people around if you're shooting indoors, like what you've put into practice or have noticed.
Sure. Yeah, for our shoot, you know, first of all, it was a struggle to get from the studio and the client our questions answered, and they kept saying, you know, we'll send our COVID protocol soon, we'll send it soon. And none of us want to be in a situation where we've agreed to a shoot and then have to pull out because we don't feel comfortable with whatever situation is in place. And so getting that information in a timely way, and I think just having your own questions really prepared. But one of my questions right out of the gate was, you know, what is the deal with ventilation? You know, has the HVAC system been updated and changed? Are there operable windows in the space? What is the square footage? And they all just, you know, it's like when they finally sent information, it was like, we should all wear masks and wash our hands. Just really basic things that, like, you know, obviously we all need to be doing, but there were really specific questions. And so things like ventilation, you have to know, you have to know, like, is there air flowing through? Is it just being recirculated? And who's, you know, I think we had like a studio manager who probably doesn't know anything about the building trying to communicate with us. And that's certainly not that person's fault. But I think being really upfront about those questions and trying to get answers so that you have time to react, and so that whoever is hosting the shoot or whatever studio it is, they know, like, these are the requirements that we're all going to have, is that it's not just about, you know, providing hand sanitizer or taking a temperature. As you said, Matt, it's really not, obviously we're all using hand sanitizer and wearing masks, but walking by and getting your temperature checked isn't really doing anything for me. I was much more concerned with, you know, do we all have individual spaces to work? Do we have air flowing through the building? And, you know, when the weather's nice, it's also easier to do those things. When it gets hot, you know, there are just all sorts of factors. And if you don't ask those specific questions, at least in my experience, you know, we just got a really nicely designed PDF document saying, you know, like, great, we're going to do all these things, but they were so basic that it didn't provide really any reassurance to me. And so I felt like it was on me to really advocate for, you know, what I think is safe, and to make sure that not only me, but my whole crew could ask questions and feel like we are owed answers, and that if we're not in charge of the space, whoever's hosting the shoot needs to be thinking about these things and communicating them and taking action and keeping up. You know, even on this panel, it's not clear, like, you know, what are we allowed to do? What are we not allowed to do? Everybody's doing things differently. I know a lot of stylists in the Bay Area who they're working on figure with models. I wouldn't do that, but things are loose and there are enough people who are excited to work, and I totally get that. But I feel like the more that we can all get aligned with what is safe and reasonable and fair, the better for everybody, because you don't want people to just feel financially pressured into doing a shoot that they're ultimately not comfortable with. And it really, I feel like in LA, from the producers I've talked with, there's more sort of coalition building around what is safe and reasonable. And it feels like in the Bay Area, it's sort of an a la carte, everybody's doing things differently. And I'm hoping that conversations like this can get us all to a point where people feel empowered to say how they feel, express their concerns, and, try to get us all operating with the same basis of, you know, information and protocol that's sort of a baseline. And then if people want to go above and beyond, that's great. But it has to be at least a bare minimum of standards so that, you know, we're not just waiting for a disaster to happen and then react and do things differently.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a conversation going on image makers in San Francisco, and a lot of the photographers are saying, you know, I'm not opening my studio. I don't want to do it. And from what it sounds like, you're not allowed to anyways in terms of models. But it sounds like in LA, the health order allows for masks to be taken off. From what I've read, you're supposed to wear masks unless you want to photograph. Okay, well, so we do have some other questions. Let's see. So this one comes from Summer. Have you experienced the issue, and Matt, you touched on this aspect a bit, of clients negotiating lower rates on the condition that teams are smaller? For example, when you're a producer, photog, stylist, are you charging for all those hats? Or like Christopher, maybe you have to direct and shoot. Just curious if you have been put in this position or how you have addressed it.
For me, it looked initially on paper that there would be some savings, even though we were taking the shot list down from, you know, 8 to 3. And then after a week of a big shoot, it was an incredible amount of work, you know, doing 3 jobs of others. So I immediately had to kind of pivot on that and tell my agent, we need to go back to where it is, because if I'm doing all this, I'm being paid a lot less, basically. But you know, we're in uncharted territory. It's how much comfort the client feels and the value that they're getting and what they're getting, and it's so hard to do. But I am definitely putting money back in there for having to do all this additional work. You know, a prop stylist is doing a prop and drop, so I've got to get all that ready. You know, there's so much more now that I'm doing that I didn't do before because we had a team.
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, you have to, I think like one of the principles, aside from like making sure, going back to the earlier discussion, aside from basically shooting outside as a common rule for me, like I don't really want, you know, going to, but like one of the things is I'm definitely making sure to keep my crews as small as possible, which does mean then that I'm wearing a lot more hats than I might like to wear. But then again, I mean, you know, but you have to have that conversation, because like you said, Matt, otherwise, you know, otherwise, you know, but you know, client they'll get all they can out of you, right? You know, so you got to make sure you're getting compensated for the extra you're putting in there. You may not necessarily, you know, like for example, like if I'm styling my own shoot, I'm not necessarily going to expect to get a full rate for a photographer and a full rate for a stylist. Right. But you know, but if there's added time that I need to, you know, do some shopping, or if there's time, you know, there's additional things that I need to do, I'll definitely try to build that in and account for that in some way. You know, I mean, I'm never going to be completely whole in this situation because it's a crazy, brave new world. Right. But you know, try to at least make it doable.
Mm-hmm. Right. Someone's asking about, is there going to be a whole cohort trained to be on set? COVID specialist, Disney is getting doctors to train their group. They will be Disney employees, but I imagine that these folks and those from other studios will be freelance at some point for photographers to hire as well. Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the whole question of who's going to be directing safety on set. And, you know, I mean, it's the way it seems to be playing out is quite a range. And it sounds like in some smaller shoot situations, it's the photographer. Is that the best way to go? I don't know. I can't necessarily answer that question, but that's what I'm noticing is actually happening. I took the infection control course that Samantha Isom put on. It was very helpful. Yeah, I think, training, educating yourself as much as possible, trying to maybe call and talk to different, whether it's producers or production coordinators, about how to make that work, you know, or set medics. We had a set medic on from National Set Medics. Is it nationalsetmedics.com or something? It was really, really informative. Great. I'd love to have a set medic on set for all shoots, you know. But anyone else have anything else to add to that?
I mean, I think when it's a small, very small job and there's not room in the budget to have someone dedicated to health and safety, then it is on all of us to like set the parameters. And if in the situation I was talking about earlier where I asked the person I was shooting to wear a mask and they said they'd rather not, I did the shoot anyway because I knew it was an outdoor shoot. I shot with a long zoom lens. I was never probably more than, at least 10 feet, if not more, away from them. Just the nature of the job, the subject matter was, I was going to shoot it that way either way. But I definitely wouldn't have shown up if it was like, oh, we're doing an intimate portrait and, you've declined to wear a mask and great, I'll see you at 10 or whatever, I wouldn't, that would be, I think, we're all adults and we have to be able to advocate and for us and our teams and realizing not every job is going to have the budget or the means to have, someone who cares more than us. So we will have to be that person, I think, in those on those shoots.
Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna say, I think, obviously, we're all artists and we're all business people. And so, we come at it from a certain perspective of, wanting to, trying to figure out logistically, how we do this. But I think, this may sound a little wishy-washy, but I think at the end of the day, we also have to remember we're just human beings, and we have a responsibility to take care of whether that person's a model on my set or somebody walking by. I have a certain responsibility as a human being to try to take care of that person. And I think especially, a lot of people in our roles, we have a background in leadership. We have a background in kind of being of taking on an extra burdens. So I think, putting together a safety protocol and putting in and keeping in mind certain ways to keep everybody safe and happy and living their life is a responsibility of us as just basic human beings. So I think if we start there, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So this is, I would say this is our last question. Josh asked, has anyone considered a silent policy or quiet policy for any, unmasked talent? There's a lot of evidence showing that even normal volume speech can emit huge numbers of particles into the air. But that's the gist of the question. Is that just for unmasked talent? I would say for even with people wearing masks, do we need to kind of, if people are laughing all over set, is that even with masks on? Has anyone run into anyone just chatting away and laughing and shouting and Okay.
One thing we did on our shoot was that we did have client and agency on set with us, but we all just logged into the Zoom shoot so that we're all at our different stations, and then you can just talk the way that you and I are all talking right now, instead of yelling across the room to a stylist or yelling across the room, to your Digitech or whatever it is. And it just helped everyone stay in their little unit, in their zone, and also helped people from, kind of yelling the way you normally would on a big set. So I definitely feel like this technology allows you to just sort of have your spot, then people can see what's happening as we're shooting, as we're tethered. Everyone can be involved, but you could just talk at a normal volume.
That is so smart.
Mm-hmm.
So smart.
Yeah, it really made a big difference. We realized, you know, by probably 9:15 on the first morning that despite our best efforts, everyone just naturally always crowds the Digitech station. And so we had different monitors, but until we sort of set everybody up on the Zoom call every morning, you just can't control yourself. And we're also used to looking, you know, crowding around the main monitor, that once we kind of gave everybody their own space, it made a world of difference. So I would suggest, you know, people can do it even on their phone or an iPad or anything, and it gives everybody an ability to participate and communicate without being right next to each other.
Yeah, I'm just loving using Capture Pilot on an iPad. It's works great. Clients love it. Just as many iPads as you can get on set is my motto. Any other things around remote shooting? Matt, how has it been for you just in general? I mean, I know because I work with a lot, like right now, especially I'm doing mostly food. That's all I'm doing right now with clients. But at the same time, they're very particular. They want to be on set. Like they don't want me to dial them in remotely. How do you actually, I mean, well, and I know that you probably have a little better system in studio. I in general shoot on location a lot. So like any advice on just encouraging clients to shoot remotely?
You know, there's a lot of hand holding, and I've moved them over. I think it worked in our benefit because these clients were like, we need to shoot this. We've got to get this photographed. And it's like, okay, well, you can't come over. So your only option is Zoom, you know, and Capture One. And along the way, we found that it actually has been working really well. So it makes me even think that if things go back to normal, if we'll have less clients on set, because it's been fine. Yes, of course they want to be there, but you know, having a screen share and then having someone like this for 8 hours, it tends to just become very fluid. And I don't think we've really missed a beat that way.
Mm-hmm. Are things, is your computer, are you doing separate computers, Zoom, or is it?
Yes.
Is it okay?
So I actually invested in two additional laptops so that we could move them. I mean, I could use old iPhones, but that way one is just sharing the screen of Capture One. Another one is just open so that we can talk. One is in the kitchen with the food stylist so the client can see what's happening there and make suggestions. But you know, we really leaned into technology during all of this, and it's been working.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, well, it sounds like, you know, Zoom is, and I'm sure there's other ways that people are doing things, but, and I'm sure people are having some issues. It's not all just easy, but it sounds like it's doable. Well, great. No, I mean, this has been so awesome. Thank you all so much. Any last words? Juliet, are you seeing any other questions I'm missing? I think we're good. Yeah, I mean, if I would encourage people to reach out to everyone if they have other questions, but yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, we can all just sit this out till we get a vaccine or whatever. But I think these discussions are really important, and I'm hoping that it'll make a difference. You know, don't be afraid to have the conversation. I think that's the biggest thing I'm getting right now from this, and keep educating ourselves. But yeah, thank you all so much. Really appreciate you being here today, and be safe and be healthy, and
we welcome other people who are listening. If you have a story to tell and you want to come and be part of this and talk about it, or offer information that's helpful for other people in the industry, we really welcome it. So go to apanational.org, find our information, contact us, be part of the conversation. It's really important that we all work together to get through this. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
And enter the APA Awards going on now. We've got all those art buyers you can't get a hold of, all those art producers. These are the people who are going to be judging the contest. You can't reach them, but we can. We're sending them awards books and source books and in contact with them. And this is another way to be in contact with them. So participate.
Nice. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you guys.